for her book, Blessing the Boats. Her most recent book of poems, really hot off the presses, is Voices. And other titles include Ordinary Woman, Mercy, Quilting, The Book of Light, Terrible Stories. Her work has been anthologized in some 200 anthologies of poetry. She has received many fellowships and awards for her collections and children's books, including the 2007 Ruth Lilly Prize, the Shelley Memorial Prize, a Charity Randall Citation, an Emmy Award, I love that one, from the American Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, selected as a literary lion by the New York Public Library, a Lannan Achievement Award in Poetry, and a Lila Wallace Reader's Digest Award. Ms. Clifton was a distinguished professor of humanities and holder of the Hilda C. Landers Endowed Chair in the Liberal Arts at St. Mary's College in Maryland until her retirement in the fall of 2005. She continues to serve St. Mary's as Professor Emeritus and friend to the college. She served as Poet Laureate of the state of Maryland from 1975 to 1985, and also serves on the Board of Chancellors of the Academy of American Poets and is a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. She's the only poet, and probably the only writer of any kind, to have had 2 of her books nominated for a Pulitzer Prize in the same year. Lucille Clifton's poems are pure and clear as fresh water, and also mysterious and evocative as 1,000 Midnights. Her work has been important to me since I was a child and read over and over again her lines in Good Times, here in the inner city, or like we call it, home. Here in the inner city, or like we call it, home. Ms. Clifton and I were speaking today about the quality of her poems that is not quite like a mantra, not quite like a koan, not quite like a talisman, but all of those things in some measure. You return to them, you turn them around, you think about them again, and new truths are revealed. Here, I read from Washington, D.C., here, someplace that was home, as we called it, beyond the reach of sociological language like inner city. That we in her poem made me think of the many we's my parents used when they meant so much more than those of us who were simply in the room. They meant we Black people, they meant we city dwellers, they meant we who ardently believed in this or that, they meant we, our family, and we beyond our family. What did we agree was home? Those 3 slips of lines provided a million possibilities to a child reading. I thought I understood those poems, and at the time, in a way I did, but the miracle of Lucille Clifton's poems is how they turn and unfold, close and turn again as you return to them over the years. So I continue to hold these poems to the light and accept the meditations they invite. They are small, perfect things meant to be held to unsedimented light. The Lucille, light Lucille, her poems tell us she was chosen to receive. She has said in an interview, quote, "I am very well aware of the fact that Lucille means light and that Lucifer also means light. And he is there sometimes. I try to be very aware of the Lucille in Lucifer. I try to be aware of the Lucifer in Lucille." So in her great Lucifer poems, she writes, "Illuminate I could, and so illuminate I did." I think the richest lessons her poems have taught me are about the proximity of life to death, the porosity between those realms. Clifton matter-of-factly communicates in poems with a grandchild before he is born, her husband after he has died, her mother after he has died. There is dreaming, there is waking, life, death, cancer is cancer, wellness and illness, but within those states, there are so many ways in these poems of knowing, listening, and perceiving. Her poems call upon all of those modalities and recognize the flow between them. That's one of the many things these poems have shown me and taught me, and to trust what you know from the body through that porous scrim between waking and dreams, this life and others, is something that these poems reveal. So those are the poems, those are the prizes, those are the accolades, that is the work. But Lucille Clifton is also, to use her phrase, a good woman. as those of us who are privileged to know her know. Someone I love very much, and so I'm overjoyed to present her here this evening, Lucille Clifton.
I don't walk very well, and so I decided not to. I want to read some new poems. I have a new book called Voices, which just came out. And then I have a series about, around this season, speaking in the voice. I speak in voices quite often. And the voices taking on a somewhat fake Rastafarian tone about the Christmas time. So, voices. Now, when people say they can't hear, I always say, listen harder. Because I know that the Bible, about which I know something, though I'm not religious, though people argue with me all the time that I am. And I try to say that I would know. I mean, wouldn't I know? I don't think that sneaks, well, it does sneak up on you, but it hasn't yet. But I think I am a spiritual kind of person. And I write a lot about those things that are considered divine. I also am very interested in naming, you know, the names of things. We people in the United States like to give things names. Now, we don't ask, what is your name? We tell you what is your name. Something odd about that. And the things that I find odd are usually sort of odd if you think about it. For instance, I think it's interesting that in the Rastafarian poems, you will see that the mother of Christ's name is Mary. And I imagine she's the only Hebrew girl ever who was named Mary. You know, if it had happened in Dublin, okay. But in, you know, wherever that is, and named Mary, that seems strange and interesting. The Bible is translation, as some of us know. Some of us think it was written in English. I don't think there was an English at the time, but perhaps. And I'm interested in naming, and I'm interested in why we give things the names they have, and why we don't believe that things have names for themselves. My thing in my classrooms is always, why do I think the cow is kind to come to me when I say cow? Well, it doesn't come to me. I am famous among cowdom for my love of hamburgers. And how do I know what it calls me? And I probably don't want to. You know, it's like a stereotypical native name. Great devourer of onions and crushed beef. So, anyway, in thinking about the names of things, I have several poems that are in the voice of, and I do things often in the voice of others. And the first that I'd like to read is called Aunt Jemima. You all know Aunt Jemima. Don't pretend you don't know. Let us not pretend. It's so much easier because I forget all the time. Aunt Jemima. White folks say I remind them of home. I who have been homeless all my life, except for their kitchen cabinets. I who have made the best of everything. Pancakes, batter for chicken, my life. The shelf on which I sit between the flour and cornmeal is thick with dreams. Oh, how I long for my own syrup, rich as blood, my true nephews, my nieces, my kitchen, my family, my home. This is cream of wheat. Now, I tried to figure out his name. You know the cream of wheat? Anyway, I did read in a newspaper at one point what it was purported to be his name. And, you know, I don't think that mothers name their children some of the things. Of course, nowadays, I happen to know a young man named Brady De Janeiro. And I did suggest to his parents that naming your children after the South American capitals seemed pointless. But anyway, cream of wheat. Sometimes at night, we stroll the market aisles, Ben and Jemima and me. They walk in front, remembering this and that. I lag behind, trying to remove my chef's cap, wondering about whatever pictured me, then left me personless. Rastus. I read in an old paper I was called Rastus, but no mother ever gave that to her son. Toward dawn, we return to our shelves, our boxes, Ben and Jemima and me. We pose and smile. I simmer. What is my name? Now, I think every living thing has a voice of some sort. It might be one I understand, it might be one I don't. But I am quite against clever poetry. You know, poetry that's just cute and clever. That's easy. And this has a clever ending, but it's so darn clever I like it. It is Neigh. Neigh. You will hear what I mean. Why was I born to balance this two-leg on my back? To carry across my snout his stocking of oat and apple? Why, I pray to you, Father of what runs and swims, in the name of the fenceless field, when he declares himself my master, why does he not understand my name? Oh. I seem to have a thing for such ones. Oh, and it's said that we picture God in our own image, right? So to me, God's an overweight lady who's pleasant, bustling childhood. Raccoon prayer. Oh, Master of all who take and wash and eat, lift me away at the end of evening forever into sanctified crumbles of paper and peelings curved over my hand. I have scavenged, as I must, among the hairless. Now welcome this bandit into the kingdom, just as you made him, barefoot and faithful and clean. Lived quite a lot of the time in St. Mary's County in Maryland, which is a very interesting place. It's the southernmost county in Maryland, and it had the first capital of the state before Annapolis was considered capital. It pretends that there were never slaves there. I'm the kind of person who thinks if there was 2,000 acres, a man and his wife and their mule was not enough, and so someone must have come over and done some work. But I don't know. Anyway, there was one season last year an albino stag, and it was quite a majestic thing. And my best friend in the world is a white woman who's an ex-nun married to a Jewish guy. Let's see how interesting. Driving down one of the roads, and we passed the white stag, and so we stopped and stared at it and realized it had stopped and was staring at us. And so I wanted to write about this. You know, I'm born to write about stuff. And it was so majestic, but I was writing the poem that's always about the majesty of the color white. It occurred to me that, why was I doing that? You know? Can you get a feel for that? Did I just inject raced into the room. Because I'm really quiet. It's okay. Anyway, I started thinking about not only were we staring at this animal, but it was staring at us. Kat and I said that we used to be an interesting couple, but now we're cliche. And we were sort of annoyed about the whole thing. Anyway, this is called albino for Kathy. We sat in the stalled car, watching him watch us. His great pink antlers branched, his pink eyes fixed on the joy of the black woman and the white one laughing together, and he smiled at the sometime wonderfulness of the other. In thinking about naming, I thought about Mataoka. Mataoka is the actual name of she who was called Pocahontas, wasn't it? We, of course, think her name was Pocahontas because that's the one we heard. And we are the arbiters of all things actual. We know this. And I think that the whole Pocahontas, I mean, she was 12 or 13, right? He was like 100. Some of you men know how hard it is to get somebody to fall in love with you when you're 100. Not impossible, it gets easier from year to year, but it's hard. And the whole romance thing. And then my students who had seen the Disney movie, a portrait of Pocahontas there, and came back and said that isn't a real photograph. It's not real. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, we saw the movie, we know what you look like. When I reminded them that it is possible that they were mistaken because the movie is an animation. It is not photographed or painted or anything. So somebody drew this kind of rather mature 13-year-old. Anyway, this is in her voice, Mataoka. In the dream was white men walking up from the river. In the dream was our land stolen away and our horses and our names. In the dream was my father fighting to save us. In the dream, the pipe was broken. And I was leaning my body against the whimpering white man. If our father loves revenge more than he loves his children, we need to know it now. Actually, that's a political poem. Dad recently was 25 years, something like that. And he was an interesting person. He was a yogi. And he had this big spiritual side. There was a temple in Baltimore and all of these things on which he was head. But he was also an academic. He was one of the planners of the African American Studies Department at Harvard, and taught commuted from Baltimore to Cambridge. That's a long way. And he was just an interesting, nobody else could have been married to either of us, actually. And his last words to me were were the title of this poem. You have been my tried and trusted friend. Said the coal miner's son to the chipper's daughter, then turned his head and died. And she and their children rose and walked behind the coffin to the freeway. After a while, she started looking at other women's husbands, other women's sons. But she had been tried and trusted once. And though once is never enough, she knew two may be too